Hello. I'm in my home and you're probably in your home. And here we are talking about digital advertising. I just want to start out by saying, thank God you're here. I think that this year is going to be the most important one of our professional lives. Why do I think that? Because you are watching me because you know something about the plumbing of the internet, the way that advertising works across it. And I think that there's almost nothing more important than an accessible, trustable internet right now. And I think one of the most important things we can do in a time of global uncertainty, during an extraordinary global slowdown, there's nothing more important than connecting innovators with the people who would benefit from their innovations. And those two goals, an accessible, trustable internet, connecting innovators with people who would benefit from their innovations. Those are the principal purposes of advertising on the internet. Not many people know how this works. We're attending a trade show like DMEXCO precisely because you do. And this is a high-stakes, crucible moment for us all. You've probably heard some form of the narrative that advertising is what keeps the internet free. And I think that's an important argument. But that really only captures half of the story. It's the reason why advertising is important to content creators, to publishers. Why is advertising so important to advertisers? Ultimately, what advertising is a gatekeeperless way for innovators to reach the people who would benefit from their innovations. Sometimes those innovators are within the walls of Procter & Gamble. Sometimes they're much smaller. Some of those smaller innovators were never able to reach the people who might benefit from their invention over television, not without a pretty extraordinary budget. Now, thanks to the pipes that we've built, that this industry, the kind of people who show up to DMEXCO, have made possible, innovators who could never have dreamed of advertising over TV can. We've created mechanisms that allow advertisers, large or small, to start small, to do more testing, do more experimentation, and when something works, to invest the fruits of those successful tests into expanding their scope. And that, of course, has enabled greater innovation, more experimentation, and therefore more bravery in trying new things, which is an extraordinarily important part of the innovation recipe. What we've built over the past few years in programmatic advertising has made advertising more accessible to more kinds of advertisers. It's made even traditionally high-spending advertisers capable of trying new things, therefore experimenting with new service providers to make their own advertising campaigns better. And it's done so in, I think, a breakthrough in fairness with the auction-based pricing model, which has democratized the purchase of all kinds of media, again, increasing accessibility, which is really an extraordinary achievement. Now, I co-founded White Ops, a cybersecurity company, so I know firsthand that the systems that have been built here aren't entirely good. They're certainly not flawless. But we've made some extraordinary progress, I think, in making ad platforms more trustable. We've solved a kind of tragedy of the commons that plagued this industry for some time. And we achieved that by building a platform for collective defense. And I'm thankful to have your attention right now because I believe that some of the patterns that we employed to make that collective defense possible can also be employed to improve the plumbing of digital advertising. The first problem we took on behalf of the advertising industry, the first trust problem, was a problem wrought by bots, really by fake audience. How can you trust your advertising spending if you can't differentiate between ads served to humans versus ads served to clever simulacra of humans? And in many ways, that problem, when we dug into it, proved to be a problem that economists call the tragedy of the commons. Why? Because the cheaters were getting away with it. And the people who were doing an exceptionally good job of fighting off fraud were only fighting it off of their platforms. Was that putting any of our cybercriminal adversaries out of business? Absolutely not. In many cases, what was happening is quality teams across different platforms were zealously defending their platforms, kicking bad actors off the platform, blocking traffic, banning accounts. But it was difficult for those teams to de-anonymize the threat actors that were behind these crimes. So when they kicked those accounts off, blocked that traffic, were they truly defeating the bot masters? No. The bot masters, who found themselves kicked off of a platform, would simply find another one where they could succeed. That led to a really common metaphor that we heard a lot in the early days of White Ops about how fighting fraud was just a game of whack-a-mole. It could be whack down here, but then it would pop up there. And really, the whack-a-mole metaphor underestimates the size of the challenge because our botmaster adversaries weren't just moving from platform to platform, they were continuously improving. So this was a scenario that happened again and again. The platform might kick some bot operation off the platform. The bot operation would then move on, still find some way of making money, and then plow the money-making profits into innovation, making the bots more sophisticated, harder to detect, more lifelike. And after they were upgraded in that way, it was more than possible to try again on the platforms that had kicked them off in the first place. But I'm using the past tense. How did we manage to change this game? White Ops was really just a catalyst. We showed up with some breakthroughs in remote malware detection. We were capable of detecting some extraordinarily sophisticated operations that had otherwise successfully evaded detection, and I'm very proud of those innovations. But that alone was not enough. Instead, we worked with pioneering early adopting customers to form a kind of collective defense, to break that tragedy of the commons problem, where WideOps was able to span multiple platforms, identify threat actors on platform A, effectively immunize platforms B, C, D, etc. So everyone within the bounds of our collective defense benefited from each other. That alone would not be enough to succeed. As we increased the penumbra of our defense, as we added more people to the collective, we effectively lowered the profits available to our cybercriminal adversaries. A crime that they used to be able to play against multiple targets, they became narrower, became more selective, which meant that the scalability of that crime's profits was permanently changed. But we went further than that. Our goal is to fundamentally disrupt the profit centers of cybercrime and change the incentives of our adversaries. That means we can't just decrease the profits of their crimes. We must also raise the cost and the risk of even trying those crimes. So we went further, again, collectively, to de-anonymize some of the bot operations that scaled into extraordinary levels of success. That, I think, has made a kind of structural improvement. We're not just playing whack-a-mole anymore. We're starting to fill in the holes. We're starting to decrease the mole population. And as we make progress in that regard, there's actually a wonderful snowball effect. You see, as we decrease the available profits and increase the cost and risk, we're changing the incentives for some of our adversaries. And the others are finding their crimes harder to perpetrate. They're finding their profits smaller. And that makes it less rational for them to invest in cybercriminal innovation. And that makes the whole collective stronger, more resilient. We have built a kind of collaborative network that brings companies much bigger than ours together so that all the people fighting the good fight don't have to fight it alone. When we amplify their gains, when we amplify their hard-won knowledge and discoveries by spreading it throughout the industry, we amplify their positive impact. It's been a great privilege of mine to see this actually work. First in the fight against bots. Now I'm seeing this same pattern play out in improving these other aspects, really, of the trustability of digital advertising, the trustability of ad-funded content, ad-funded media on the internet. And that, I think, is one of the greatest things that people like us, people who know a thing or two about how the plumbing of the internet really works, that's one of the things that we can do to substantively improve modern society. The sheer accessibility of the internet and the sheer accessibility of commercial speech on the internet, of advertising. Both of these are extraordinary instruments of empowerment for ordinary people across the globe. I've spent decades of my life working on empowering people to freely communicate. As a hacker and a cyberpunk, when I was younger, I worked a lot on encrypted communication platforms, ways of trying to make it safe for humans, no matter where they happen to be born, to freely find and communicate with each other. And not all of those innovations worked. There have been many setbacks along the way. And during that time, the most successfully empowering technologies have been the ones that could scale their accessibility. The accessibility of the internet is by no means perfect today. We've got a lot of work to do to make free access to information, freedom of communication, kind of human right, accessible to everyone. But that fight cannot be an unfunded fight. When we talk about how advertising funds a free internet, we don't just mean for the rich countries in the global north. Advertising is funding a free internet for all. It's an ennobling endeavor. Because we work in this industry, we're often thinking more about its flaws than its successes. Right? Programmatic advertising has democratized media in ways that it's never been democratized before. That's greatly increased its accessibility. At the same time, programmatic advertising is sending ads to the people we know and love for products they've already bought. But those flaws, I think, are growing pains and shouldn't distract us from from the world-changing potential of the plumbing that we are working so hard to improve now from our homes. I think that we're making some extraordinary breakthroughs in collaboration as an industry, but also in building a kind of infrastructure that enables communication and therefore collaboration across radically different groups of people across the globe. And that's work that's worth investing in. It's work that's worth believing in, even though sometimes talk of advertising seems to breed a certain measure of cynicism. You might think that my life as an entrepreneur, co-creating a security company, is one that's fundamentally grounded in conflict. After all, my company exists to outwit our cybercriminal adversaries. At the same time, those adversaries are trying to outwit us. It's spy versus spy. But that central conflict isn't what drew me to information security. Instead, this may surprise you, it's actually the extraordinary opportunities for cooperation. Because when you work in security, you can bring together different organizations that, in every other respect, are the fiercest of competitors. But they will cooperate, they will collaborate, they will co-invent with each other when it means fighting off predators. That's a big challenge. Challenge in many forms. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for the allies who've joined our fight along the way to date. But as I'm sure you know, our fight is not over. The voluntary collaboration, cooperation that we need to bring to bear to further strengthen this industry is manifold. There's frankly something unifying about banding together to face a common enemy.